Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Emanuele Pettener. I teach Italian language and literature, and I am a writer in residence in the Department of Languages, Linguistics and Comparative Literature at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. Today I would like to speak about my unusual experience. I was a Venetian youth with America in my heart. Now I am a tropical man with Italy in my heart. My heart is always elsewhere. Since when I was a child, I entertained myself with the joy of writing. I will never understand those struggling and gloomy writers who talk about the sufferance of writing, the pain of the creation. Usually their books are a sufferance and a pain for the readers. One advantage of writing is actually that you can put pain at the right distance and glimpse the beauty of pain. Writing is also a consolation. Writing for me is an electric pleasure. The childish game of composing things together, words and images, in an unexpected way, to produce a sparkle of light. The game doesn't work all the time, but when it does, it is a kind of magic. And it really does not count if other people cannot see the sparkle of light and the magic. Maybe they are blind or just don't believe in magic. It's their right. Anyway, what it counts is playing the game and enjoying it. But I'm digressing. Writing for me is painting. Painting in movement, dynamic painting, an attempt to reproduce and elaborate the colors of nature, of the places I see, the colors of people, the colors of life. That's why my experience as an Italian American, as a tropical Venetian, is so essential to what I write. My wife Ilaria and I arrived in America in the year 2000, newlyweds. We had married 2 weeks earlier and were accepted into a Ph.D. program in comparative literature at Purdue University, Indiana. For me, it was the first time I came to America. Actually, it was the first time I took a plane in my life. It was also the first time I got married. After 20 years in this country, I now consider myself to be an Italian American. American because every time I exhibit my blue American passport, I feel a shudder of pride and complicity with the police. American because my children were born Americans, because I have an American salary, I pay American taxes, I drive an American car, and frankly, I cannot walk around or even teach without my humongous paper cup of vanilla flavored coffee. But I am also Italian. I never cared much about Italy during the 28 Italian years I lived there. this attitude was very Italian of me. Italians do not like their country. They like their cities, towns, villages. I mean the place where they were born. Even the young people take pride in their birthplace, traditions, history, food, and patron saints. Let's not forget that Italy is a patchwork of villages and towns and cities surrounded by walls. Since the Middle Ages, and even before that time, each town had its own autonomous government, its own currency, its own military, its own language. Italians belong first to their family, second to their birthplace, third to their soccer team, finally, maybe, to their country. Italians do not like Italy because they associate Italy with the Italian government and generally with political institutions, and there is nothing to like about them. That's why I feel pretty sure that if patriotism were calculable, Italians would win the first prize for the least patriotic country in the world. The word patriottismo, patriotism, is very suspicious to us. It smells of fascism and bigotry. We only become patriotic during soccer's World Cup and as a reaction when Italy is stereotyped and ridiculed by the others, especially by the British, by the Germans, by the French, who, by the way, would win the prize for the most patriotic country in the world. Now, every summer I go back as an American tourist, I realize Italy's incomparable beauty. From north to south, I'm dazzled by its extraordinary meddling of nature, art and culture, and by its diversity. On those delightful, cute streets on which Dante and Leonardo walked, you too can walk in 5 minutes from a medieval royal residence to a Gothic cathedral, while smelling the roses from a Renaissance garden, listening to the voice of a soprano doing her rehearsal in the Baroque opera theater, and eating the freshest bread with prosciutto di Parma and a hint of extra virgin olive oil. Italy is a hormonal experience. Every brick inspires a sonnet. You turn the corner and find a new classic palace or a 13th century church. While here in America, you go around the corner and you find Starbucks. It's okay. One of the first effects of my having moved to America was that I ceased to argue with my mother. I had argued with my mother for 28 years. Then I put an ocean between her and me, and now we get along as never before. Take it as a metaphor if you want, but the same phenomena happened in my relationship with Italy. It's not only that before coming to America I had not been able to appreciate completely the miracle of Italy's beauty, of its art, of its food, is that I was angry with my country. And that's probably why I was so blind. I had gotten a degree, but I could not have a job related to what I had studied. Never mind. I got another kind of job, full-time, regular contract. But I was not paid. My expenses were not covered, and I was not paid. I had to beg my boss for my salary. "These are difficult times," he explained to me patiently. "Tell me about it," I said. He became angry with me. "You should feel lucky. You have a job." It's humiliating to be young in Italy. Italy seemed so dark, so small, so suffocating. Not only was there an absence of opportunities, even dreaming of an opportunity was forbidden, castrated. "You have a job and you want also to be paid? So ungrateful of you." Eventually, it became too sad walking through those little depressing streets that had been walked by millions of dead people before me, and those enormous and despondent royal palaces and gloomy judging medieval churches turned out to be overwhelming. And always that annoying soprano's voice in the air. There was an escape, and that escape was my imagination. My imagination had a shape, the shape of America. From an early age, I had developed a feeling for all American things and identified with that perception. Through Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck cartoons, and later through TV series like Happy Days, Different Strokes, the Dukes of Hazzard, the Jeffersons, the Lieutenant Columbo, and my personal heroines, the Golden Girls, and still later Steinbeck, Scott Fitzgerald, Nabokov, and the Hollywood movies, of course, rock and roll and jazz music. America lived in me. It was a feeling nourished by images, evocative roads, and evocative words. The French writer Marcel Proust devotes the last section of his masterpiece, first volume, to the magical power of the names of places we have never seen. The narrator feels these names are not an inaccessible ideal, but a real and enveloping substance where he dives to enjoy the pleasure of the life not yet lived. Proust points out that the countries we long for occupy at any given moment a far larger place in our true life than the country in which we may happen to be. Words excited me. Any word evocative of something quintessentially American, or that I understood to be quintessentially American, melted me like caramel around a candied apple. I fell into dreams of happiness and languor anytime I heard baseball. whiskey and soda, Coca-Cola, Cadillac, Ford, Broadway, blues, jukebox, Fort Alamo, 7076, 1929, Gone with the Wind, Clark Gable, etc., etc., etc. My America was a puzzle of different eras, from the Far West, thanks to John Wayne, to the 20s of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, from the colorful 50s created for me by Elvis Presley, to the 70s shaped by Clint Eastwood movies. Geographically, the borders were precise. New York on the right, California on the left, and in the middle, indefinite, endless spaces and endless roads, the magical rural America with its infinite golden fields, the mountains, the deserts, the freedom. In my room, listening to Frank Sinatra, I spent so much time in New York, and while reading The Great Gatsby, I enjoyed Long Island. And New England while reading Lolita, with Mr. Humbert guiding me to many motels throughout the country. And then the movie, Fried Green Tomatoes, and the books by Truman Capote, which allowed me to invent my version of the South, listening to the Beach Boys I surfed on the waves of the Pacific. But I never cared about Florida. I never had any sensation, any thought about Florida. It seemed to me outside of my America. Florida was not America to me. The name itself was not American. It didn't possess the sensation of sun and dust that I perceived in Tennessee. The intense blue color I associated with Colorado sky. The gospel songs of slaves I could hear in Virginia. The suggestive music made of vowels and sighs of Ohio. The smell of whiskey in Kentucky. If you mentioned one by one the states, my heart skipped a beat 49 times. But it came back to rest with Florida. Complete indifference. Indiana, the first state I lived in, satisfied my expectations. I found the America I longed for, the British style of Purdue's beautiful campus, the large wooden houses, the red mailboxes, the cornfields, the immense sky, the freezing winds, the candid snow, and the nice people. Everything so very American in Indiana. So when after just one semester, our mentoring professor suggested Ilaria and me to apply to the Ph.D. program, the Public Intellectual, at FAU, where he had been hired as a chair of the Department of Languages, Linguistics and Comparative Literature, I said yes immediately because he was my professor and I trusted him. However, I was uncomfortable. All my life I had dreamed about living in America, and I had finally done it. Now, go to Florida a place full of snakes? As far as I knew, Florida was a place full of snakes. And I hate snakes. In the beginning, Florida was not easy and not as welcoming as Indiana had been. We arrived in August and I could not take a step without sweating profusely. The FAU campus, empty and silent like Jesus Christ's sepulchre, and the university's architecture left me unhappy. Instead of the elegant, old-fashioned buildings of Purdue, I found big white blocks scorched by a pitiless sun. More than an academic place, FAU seemed a penitentiary. Even the people didn't appear to be as pleasant as the people in Indiana. Now, after living 20 years in Boca, I can make some observations. Snakes are very shy animals, and we respect each other's privacy. As anyone, I love Florida weather from October to April, but actually I even love it in August, when I still sweat, but not as much as I used to sweat. I don't know if my body adjusted to August or August got adjusted to my body. Anyway, happiness is for the most part an expectation for happiness, and August always gives me a pleasurable expectation for the shower I'm going to take. I like now the cubic, tropical architecture of the campus, maybe because I am distracted by its splendid nature, the wonderful red and yellow flowers, the majestic banyan trees, the emerald vegetation, and the little funny animals, ducks, iguanas, birds, populating the campus, together with the refreshing back and forth of young people. If you have a good ear, you can perceive the buzz of their dreams. Another thing about Florida. When we lived in Indiana, nobody mentioned the intention of visiting us. Once it became known to our family and friends that we would move to Florida, I found out so many people loved us. It's really touching to know everybody now wants to visit Ilaria and me. I realized that I might have been the only Italian who had cultivated a no-interest mindset towards Florida. Most Italians are absolutely crazy for Florida, and their dream is moving here and living here. Their dream is my life. For the past 20 years, many friends and relatives have come to visit us in Florida, but also people who claim to be my friends, even though I didn't remember them. I usually like to ask them about their first and most significant impressions of South Florida, and if there is anything worthwhile that Italians should learn from South Floridians and possibly import to Italy. You won't believe that almost everyone answers. People here are nicer than us. South Floridians are nicer than Italians. You haven't met the people in Indiana, I say. But they don't want to go to Indiana. Italians are truly surprised to receive tanta gentilezza, such a kindness. They are not used to being greeted by strangers who ask them how it is going and wish them a nice day. When I am in Italy, leaving a grocery shop, I might say buona giornata, and people are pleasantly surprised because Italians rarely use such nice ways, courtesies anymore. It is also worth considering this. When I ask my American students who go to Italy for their study abroad program about their first impressions of Italy, most of them answer, Italians are nicer than us. So probably we must consider what people mean when they use the word nice. Or more simply, we can understand that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. The Italian writer Italo Calvino often pointed out that we need a country to fantasize about, to create an escape for our imagination, especially when our own country, where we actually live, becomes suffocating. We Italian Americans dream of Italy. Perhaps it's better to say we keep inventing and recreating Italy, while Italians keep inventing and recreating America, and specifically South Florida. For many of us, we have a human need to believe there is a place with people nicer than those who surround us. This place is always elsewhere. Writing, like reading, is also an escape, a way to transform the places where I live or lived through my imagination. I lived in Venice and I live in South Florida. Everything I write and I wrote is set in these two places, between these two places, that of course I change and I reinvent to make these places my places, figment of my imagination. I reject realism and I look for imaginary reality. As I said, writing for me is a kind of painting, and I am a naive painter. I love vivid colors and beautiful scenarios. So I was very lucky. My places are Boca Raton, a very colorful area from many points of view, and Venice, the most beautiful city in the world. Venice was the set of my first novel, the only one written in Italy, but America too was already there. The protagonist's imaginary best friend is Paul Newman. My second novel tells three stories intertwined of Italians living in Boca and is set both in Boca and in Venice. My third novel is extremely colorful, even in the title, Arancio, orange. And it is a surreal story set in a South Floridian city with a name sounding very Venetian, Baia. My only book in English, A Season in Florida, translated by Thomas de Angelis and published by Bordighera Press in New York, collects 7 stories set in Venice and in South Florida. In 2021, my fourth novel, Sono stato giovane a lungo poi sono riuscito a smettere, that we could translate I was young for a while, then I quit, will be published by Arcadia Editore in Cagliari, Sardinia. It is a story of 4 American friends in their 70s and 80s, all of them residents in Boca, joining a study abroad program in Venice. Finally, the newborn cultural association and publisher I Libri di Montrachem will publish next spring or summer my narrative guide to Palm Beach County, una birra al mango sotto il cielo blu, a mango beer under the blue sky, in which I describe the many signs of Venice in this subtropical area. 20 years ago, Ilaria and I came here to live our American dream. America meant for us freedom from that gloomy lack of opportunities, from the worries and struggles to make a living in Italy. Now our American-born children cannot wait for the summers to go back to Italy. For them, Italy means freedom too. Freedom from homework. I have always been curious to explore my children's relationship with their 2 countries. Ida, my daughter Ida, was 7 when I asked her what she liked most about Italy. I nonni, the grandparents. While my son Gabriele was 9 when at Thanksgiving dinner I asked him what he was thankful for. Answer: for my family, for the guy who will invent time travel, for pizza, and for Adam Sandler. Now they are teenagers and I can be more direct. Ragazzi, do you feel more Italians or more Americans? Papa, they answer, looking at me as if stating the obvious. We feel Italians in America and Americans in Italy. Thank you very, very much. Ciao. I would like to dedicate this presentation to my great friend, Tom Di Salvo. I truly miss him a lot. I miss going to fish with him early in the morning when it was still dark, and as a breakfast he prepared for me his sfincione, a kind of delicious Sicilian pizza, and he spoke of Borges and Socrates at 5 in the morning with such a passion. We never caught a fish, but it didn't matter. I was so happy to listen to him. He was so refreshing, so inspirational. His culture was extraordinary. His knowledge of Latin, philosophy, literature, languages, art, cooking was intoxicating. He was a true humanist, a Sicilian American humanist. Culture was his everyday life. Culture was freedom. I really miss Tom for this. I really miss his big heart. Thank you very much, my dear friend, Tom Di Salvo.